Just like students who do not care if classes end a little bit short, most teachers are just fine with that as well. All right. The riches of review. This is not the riches of repetition. I do not have a handout because I want to just discuss some things from various angles. That's how we think of review often, though, is just review is going over the same thing again, right? That's what review is. We say it one day, and then we just say it again. Well, there is truth to that, but I want to think about today, how can we just enrich our reviews so that it's not just the riches of repetition, but we are making it a meaningful experience with goals beyond just repeating what we had said or learned before. Now, unfortunately, this throws me off just a little bit because I did not teach another class I had taught in Mexico, and I could pick up from something. So I'm going to go ahead and do this anyhow, though, and teach you something. I'm going to teach you, I'm a teacher, I want to teach you a fact. And then we'll come back and discuss this later. So I just want you to remember this one thing. Probably most of you do not know that you have this. But today's lesson, I want to teach you that you have an amygdala. All right. How many of you know that you have an amygdala? Oh, a few of you do. Some of you do not know this. Well, that's too bad. Somewhere you have an amygdala. So we don't have time to really discuss it. We're in a hurry. We've got a lot of classes. So just believe me. So that if tomorrow there's a test and it says, do you have an amygdala? You say, yes. And you'll get 100%. All right. How many believe me that you have an amygdala? Okay, a little hesitant. You're actually more accepting groups than most I've taught. Most are about 10%. You know, nobody wants to be fooled. Okay. We're going to come back to this later. I'm going to give you a little test. We like to do this as teachers, and one good thing about teacher events like this is that we learn what it's like to be a student. And we sort of like to see our students squirm just a little bit, don't we? The test, wait a minute, what's coming? Am I going to be embarrassed? Am I ready for this? You know, there's pop quizzes that we give. Okay, so here it goes. I'm going to give you a little test. I'm going to read a list of words. They're very simple words. I ask you to not write them down. That would be cheating. So you just listen to these words. You close your eyes and just think about the system, about 12 words. They're all words that are very common. We'll come back later and discuss these words for purposes you'll understand later. All right, so words are as follows. Candy, sugar, sour, car, good, taste, honey, eat, pie, cake, soda. Okay. One thing that I want us to appreciate by the end of this is simply the difficulty of learning. Learning is memory. See, there's so much that we understand as teachers. It's simple to us because we've taught it maybe many years. Or at least, hopefully, we understand it. Now, we know what it's like to teach things that we hardly have an understanding of, right? But let's say we've taught, we mastered this material, and it seems fairly easy to us. Let's appreciate how difficult it is to just remember things, especially under a little bit of pressure, right? One thing that review allows us to do is work with what sometimes we call multi-sensory learning. We have our student. What are the 3 ways that students learn? Tell me. They learn by what? Hearing. They learn by hearing. All right. So hearing and somebody?
Seeing.
They learn by seeing. Another avenue into the minds of our students. And one more is, let me say, kinesthetic or just doing. All right. And that's more what they do, of course. But there's 3 ways that we learn. If you're a very auditory learner, maybe you learn well just by lectures. Some students do. Maybe you do. You hear it and you know. Well, I've seen teachers up front, they're talking, their hands are going, they're saying the right thing, it's structured well. But it's like, get a piece of chalk, turn around and show how that works. Maybe you're there to explain how to diagram a sentence. You know, the subject goes here and the verb, you sometimes forget to work backward, you know, as students see it. Subjects and verbs and straight lines. Just show them. Because if they're a very visual learner, I'm a very visual learner, that's why I use this a lot, because I like to see, you know, how things kind of look. Your visual learners then don't learn nearly as much because you just kind of assume. So multi-sensory review allows us to keep coming back to our information and showing it from a different angle, bringing it in from a different perspective. And we're not just, it's not the riches of repetition, we're just saying it and we say it, but we visit it from different perspectives. We connect it to other things. All right, we'll come back to this in a little bit. Let's go back to our list of words, since it's now a minute or two. Here's the test. I'm going to ask you if I said 3 different words, and in your head you just say yes or no. Don't raise your hand and don't verbally say anything quite yet. Number 1, did I say in that list of words, was the word house in the list? Number 2, was the word sweet in the list? And number 3, was the word cake in the list? Okay. Now it's the time to raise your hand. And you decide, yes, no, it's not like this. You decide, you know how students do, right? Well, now you know, that's kind of like, it's nice to look around, right? Get a little affirmation. If you think I said a certain word in the list, raise your hand. If not, of course, keep it down. So back to the list the words I asked about. House. How many thought, yes, house was in that list? Okay. How many would say sweet? Yes, sweet was in the list. Okay. And last of all, cake was in the list. All right. It works every time. Do you want to hear the list, or you want to hear the truth? Of course. House? No. Sweet? That's the one, right? No. Cake? Yes. Now, I know that was a mind game. But the point, why did nobody raise their hand for cake? Typically 1 or 2 out of maybe 50 sometimes would raise their hand, or nobody. Why? House. Cake, usually a third to a half. And this was about a half. Yes. Did I say the right word? Sweet. Sweet. What's in the list? I said one time, do you want me to read the list again? Yes. The school remembers that from the back. You gotta be kidding, of course you read that. No, it wasn't in the list. Why did sweet? Yeah. House? No. Why?
Said candy, honey, cake.
Yes.
Categorize them right away.
All right, okay. So the power of connection. Review is all about the power of connection. Now don't mislead your students like I did, but it's more fun to make a point in this way than the other way, right? The power of connecting, we tend to take information and we keep it as isolated boxes of information. That is no fun for the students. So back to this thing that you have. Let's go back to that. Now, if you did not know that you have one of these things, which you still don't know where it is, but we'll get to that shortly. I just wanted to keep it as a pure fact that I said auditorily. I didn't write it down on the board for reasons. This was only a few minutes. This is not that big of a word, but I just am doing this to show you how information not connected or explained is very frustrating and unsatisfying. And then we wonder why our students don't enjoy school, or why they can't remember things. Well, because we tend to do this. Blocks of information, discrete facts, we don't take the time to connect it. Sometimes I'm just pretty much shocked with this. In middle and upper grades, when I really say, we have talked about photosynthesis. What do you know about photosynthesis now? And it seems like they know almost nothing. You ever get that feeling? It's just discouraging and shocking. Sometimes it feels like history, taught and taught. Okay, now why don't you write a paragraph about, like, summarize a little bit what happened now in the Civil War. I don't even know where to go with that. What is going on? Are we teaching too much and they're retaining too little? Some of it is our review. We're not going back and bringing this up and bringing this up, connecting it, deepening their understanding, creating a rich fabric of understanding. All knowledge is connected to other knowledge. Well, our tendency is to create boxes. They're frustrated. Somebody who did not know that word, now I want you to hear what it was. You heard it once, twice. You didn't see it, you heard it, and you know how to pronounce it.
Amygdala?
Again?
Amygdala?
That's very close. It's close enough. Good job. You get an A. Amygdala. Very close. What is this amygdala? Well, if I would have at least shown you how it's spelled, amygdala, and I left that up there a little bit, said, okay, it's not too hard. Amygdala. And then erased it. A few of you would have remembered it, one of you. Because I would have been using not only what you heard, but what you saw. I need to see this. Very much so, very much so. I want to see it, hear a word of, oh, you see, oh, that's how it's spelled. Oh, no wonder it's pronounced that way. So, okay, this makes sense now. So, if you hear it, you see it, but you still don't know what this is. In fact, let me tell you, you have two of these. It's getting worse. What, do you want to check your pocket? Aren't you sure that you want two of these things? They sound a little dangerous, don't they? Well, actually, I know you have one, or I'm sure you do, because almost everybody does. It is deep in our brain. We have two hemispheres. Deep inside our brain are what they would call nuclei, which is special clusters of neurons, cells that work in a very specific way. Okay, it's not on your cerebral cortex. It's not on the outside where you do all your thinking. This is deep inside. It's where you don't do thinking, but it's other processes. It is what allows you to process fear. There's other components of it, but it's a lot of your emotional well-being, fear. If you would not have amygdala, the amygdala, you would not be able to experience fear. I could show you a snake, and you would want to pet it. I could show you a fire. You would not be afraid to just walk up to it. There's a lady whose amygdala was destroyed. I'm not sure if that was through a lesion of the brain or an operation or what it was, but anyway, her amygdala was destroyed. They cannot make her be afraid. They cannot. They can jar snakes, roaring lions, anything. You cannot tell her, this is dangerous. You should be afraid. She doesn't know what afraid means. It's like telling a blind person, just see it. They don't have the ability. What you need to appreciate is emotion is actually a process of your brain, of course. I know, you can transcend that and bring it under control. It's all true. But you cannot tell a person to be afraid when they do not have the circuitry that allows you to be afraid. All right? So now, I do have an amygdala. Actually, I have something I didn't even know I had, and I'm glad I have it. So if I would have started with, review allows us to go back and get something we know already, and then start tying the new information to it. So if I would have told you first, I'm going to teach you something about your brain. And if I would have said, how many of you know you have a brain, and you know where it is? All of you would say, yeah, right? Okay, got it right. So we started with what you clearly know. Then we want to teach you something about the brain that maybe you don't know, that you should be thankful you have. Now you just know a little more. That's important you know that, but just for information. Now you know where it is, why you have it, you saw it, you heard it. Well, there's days in review and in class, we basically get done the amygdala thing. We basically taught them a skill, a process, but they really don't know why they're doing it, what they're doing. We come back later and explain. It's sort of like if I would come and visit your classroom, and I would visit for 10 minutes, walk out, and I would write a little report about what I saw. I couldn't see much in 10 minutes. If I could go back in the next day, I could see what I saw the previous day, but then, oh, this, and this, and this, oh, and I didn't see that. See, I could just start broadening my understanding that I could not absorb in the first day. If I could go back the third day, I would reaffirm what I saw the first day, what I saw the second day, but I'd have time them to absorb and connect a few more dots. And the more I think about this, and I've watched students and also studied some how do we learn and etc., it impresses me how hard it is to learn new information. And when we know it well, again, too easy to assume this is pretty simple, we move on, and then they just don't remember. And then we're, come on, I told you, it was so clear. No, it's our job to massage this information, to connect this information. Yes, we told them the amygdala, but we have to tell them about the brain. We have to tell them what it does. And as they connect dots, the more and more information. And we're trying to connect it in ways that this will come up and make sense later. Let's think a little more about how do we learn, because I think it helps us appreciate the complexity of learning. So let's just go into the human brain just a little bit again. Fascinating discovery that they made about how many years ago. So this is a person, by the way. So deep in the brain, actually very close to the amygdala, very unique little part. Two of these again. Get to that in a minute. So when we learn, as you're listening, what I find fascinating is you don't know what all you know. You can't even think about what all you know until you think about it, right? Like right now, are you aware of what all you know about things? How much do you know about mechanics? Some of us, not much. How much do you know about the stars? How much do you know about human anatomy? How much do you know about English? How much do you know about vocabulary? You can't even hold much in your mind at all. This is part of the problem of multimedia learning. There's fascinating research on this. We are teachers. I'm not against videos. I'm not against PowerPoint, but honest, it's one reason I use very little PowerPoint anymore in lectures. I use it only when I do a lot of lecture on the brain. I use that for that because of models of the brain and complex anatomy, etc. For certain things I use it, and I'm not knocking it. Do you know what? It overloads the brain just like that, and it's distracting. Students can't learn much they can't hold much in their head at a time. Research has proven this over and over again. Back in the 80s, just to give you one quick example, they thought the key to education were the hyperlinks that you find online. Oh, this would be great. So students are going to read about George Washington and one of these hyperlinks about his childhood, hyperlinks about some stories about when he was in these various positions. And you know what they find? The students read about George Washington, click. After a while, they're reading about his childhood, click, click. And after a while, what do we instead? They come back to this. They have found repeatedly that adults even reading pages with hyperlinks that they can click on to enrich their experience, they end up confused at the end. And they take tests, and hands down, they do worse over and over and over again. Why? We cannot hold much in our heads at a time. And the multimedia way of learning, with the noise and the movement and the pictures, our brains just, they cannot handle it. Now, I know I said you should use multi-sensory learning, but I'm not so sure that we should be talking 80 miles an hour and drawing 80 miles an hour. See, we have to slow this thing down. So we tell them, we show them, here's how you would diagram this. You can see it. I could be talking quite all the time. We can show them, we leave it on the board, and nobody's talking, and they can see it. I'm all for multi-sensory, but not multimedia. Are you understanding the difference? Where we're putting too much. So, back to how we learn. This is sometimes called our short-term memory. So, let's use this as an example. If I would have said, I'm going to teach you something about the brain. Right away, you would pull up what you know about the brain. If you know some of those terms. Two hemispheres, it's all this stuff up here, it's very soft. And you're just kind of pulling it up. Then we as teachers can very slowly, we can add into this. This is what we do when we review. We pull it up, we bring back what they learned, and we just keep reinforcing what they know, adding more information, connecting more dots, but not much at a time at all. Because one time, they're not going to retain it. We need to pull it up again, add to it, make it richer, hit it from different angles, connect it to other things. Now, what does your brain do with that? Anybody know? Well, they've learned just in the last, I don't know how many years. What does our brain do with information? Well, there's a very fascinating part of our brain. This is a little longer word, but it's not hard to say. It is called the hippocampus. I'll write this one down. Hippocampus. The hippocampus is, again, a little bit of tissue, so you're very close to your amygdala. It's part of the limbic system in there, the center of your brain. A lot of emotions, memories. There's this little cluster of cells called the nuclei, again, broad term, both sides of your brain, that takes what you learn and decides where to put this information. So if you remember the word amygdala, that is going to be sent by your hippocampus to a place where that kind of vocabulary is stored. If tomorrow you see me and you say, I recognize that fella. That, my face, is actually filed at an absolute different region. And in fact, if you recognize me from the side profile, that's at a slightly different place yet. Isn't that amazing? If you would see me from the side, you might not recognize me. Well, if you'd see somebody you know well from the side, you'd recognize, but you might recognize me from the front, right? Who is that? Who is it? You turn it. Oh, that's that fellow. From the side, you didn't. Why? Well, because you basically saw me this way, right? Somebody you know well, your brain knows face and slightly different place will be the side profile, which is fascinating. If you remember my name, Anthony, that's at a different place yet, that recall. Well, this is not at the accurate places at all. Things are filed at a particular place. It's by the hippocampus, and you know when it does a lot of this work? While you sleep. Very true. I just give this one little example. I just found this fascinating. So I would do this amygdala thing. I was in Mexico for 2 weeks here recently. There were 7 different communities. So I got to do the lesson where I would give this amygdala word just to prove a point, and then I'd come back and review it and pick this word up. I couldn't do that. But normally there was a number of hours in between, morning and afternoon. And only a few hands would go up hours later. How many know this word? Amygdala. Almost nobody. One evening, because of our arrangement of our classes, I taught it in the evening. They went home. I taught it the next morning again, and about 30% of the people raised their hand. I just about followed. I got what? And I started connecting these dots. You gotta be kidding. I said, did you know this word before? No. How many knew this word? No. Maybe I'm stretching it, but it felt to me that they heard the word amygdala. Within an hour or two, they were in bed. Their brain followed that, came back the next morning, raised their hands. About a third of them knew it. I said, usually it's about 5-10% know. Only a few out of the group. Well, it was the morning versus the afternoon. I know we forget things, but that's why people study their Bible memory before they go to bed. They learn songs before they go to bed. Is this just a joke? No, it is not. Not even close. While you sleep, your students need to get to bed. You need to get to bed as well. Yes?
So we got school at the wrong time of the day.
That's a really good question. Because by the time they go home and they eat and do something different, they fall asleep, what all fell out, and the hippocampus no longer has that information. That's a good question. So as we review, we keep pulling this up, and the hippocampus goes back and stores it in the long-term memory in a stronger way. Just a quick interest thing here. There's a man, he died here fairly recently. He was identified as HM. Just identified as HM, just for neurologists. His hippocampus is destroyed. Actually, I think it was through an operation. As they were experimenting, it was a bad experiment. They removed both of his hippocampuses. He cannot make new memories anymore. Could not. How old are you? Well, 52. No, you're 75. I didn't know that old. Really? Oh. Yep. 5 minutes later. So, how old are you? Well, 52. 52? No. You're 75. What? 75? Oh, I didn't think I'm nearly that old. Oh. Why? Yes. He couldn't make new memories. Where does he live? What did he eat for breakfast? Stuck. Those memories back in there. So neurologists understand a lot of these things by people who've had brain injuries and the effect that it has on us. They're a lot richer than you realized. You have hippocampus, and what else do you have? That other thing, what's that thing called again? Yes? The amygdala, yes. Tomorrow morning for sure you'll know first thing when you wake up, right? Hopefully. Well, I know that's a little off the subject of review, but the reason I'm saying this is to appreciate the difficulty of learning. And unless we review, and we strengthen these pathways in the brain and the filing system, we forget so easily. We have, I'm afraid, a model here that we have come, in some of our settings, I'm afraid, to accept. We cram the information in. We've got a lot to say. We say it fast. We've got to move on to the next lesson. So we cram because coming up is what? The test. Oh, the test. It's all about the test. And once you know the test, what's going to happen? You forget. You know, we can feed this. You let your students study 5-10 minutes before a test. Well, whatever they learn in those 5-10 minutes, they're not going to know 5-10 minutes afterward. Mostly. I would suggest you don't do that. At least very little. Because they know. They don't need to learn this long-term memory thing. They don't need to really know it. They just cram it. You know those Bible verses that match up with something else, or definitions, or dates? Oh, there's 5 minutes. And I bet you can remember there's 10. Grab the test, fill it out, go right to that section. Did you see students ever do this? Okay, thank you. They're the same in Texas. All right, I figured, but I want to make sure. Fill it in, and then they do the rest of the test, and then they give it, and they say, woo, if you would give that test to me tomorrow, I would have no idea. And then we smile and say, oh, at least you got a good test on your, good grade on your test today. We can feed this by, and as much as I like Christian Light, I say this kindly, it is a little bit of the propensity of the Christian Light model by the Light Unit System. Where you learn, you close the book, you move on. Work against that concept. I tell my students over and over, if it's worth learning, it's worth remembering. I like to have a set of information that keeps growing, especially like in science, history. It's quizzable and testable all year long. Just keep bringing it back. I'd rather have them know 100 things at the end of the year that they know than 1,000 things that they think they heard those terms before. That's what's happening over and over. Then we try to build on that the next year, they don't know it. I think sometimes we need to teach less and learn more. Teach less and learn more. Sometimes we call it the irreducible minimum. Okay? I really am intrigued with this concept. The irreducible, you can't reduce it. This is a minimum. You must know this. Here's what, in irreducible, we shrink this down to the core content, and this is what we review. This is what we expect. Work hard to multisensory learning. Review it well. Enrich it. Look at it from different angles. Add to its understanding. Tie it to other information so they really know this. Rather than we just teach them so many things. We smile broadly at the end of the year. We covered all 634 pages of a biology book. Wow. Good job, bud. Do they know? Do they know some things really well? Or is it just kind of a blur? Covered all the pages, maybe that's good, as long as you identify what really does matter, or it is a blur. And they don't really enjoy that. They're frustrated, and often you're frustrated. Well, let's replace this with, hey, learn. Master. What a difference. Master the material, and then retain. Instead of cram, we learn. Instead of just testing it, we're concerned about mastery. Instead of forgetting it, of course, we want to retain it. So this model, just think about this. How does this play out in your school? How's this working as far as your model, what you expect of your students, what they think you expect of them? And we need to push in this direction. Another way of reviewing and mastery material is that we simply work toward understanding. So the one day, come back to our multisensory and also just beyond just the facts, and facts are dumb things by themselves, is a simple thing of, let's just say, 1/2 times 1/4 equals 1/8. We teach our students that at what grade? 4th, 5th? 4th, 5th. Do they have any idea what this means? Are we only teaching them a process or a skill? We'll review again. The next day we got to move on. Yes, but can we go back and explain why this works? We can't get it done the first day. Review gives us opportunity to expand the whys of what they do. It's frustrating to learn only skills. Just like it would be frustrating if I would have left and I would have said, on the way out tonight when you want to pray, thank God for your amygdala. I have no idea where this thing is, but you assured us we have one. What the world? It's kind of disgusting even, right? So, I know it's such an easy thing to explain. But how often do students say, I don't why? Well, I'm not quite sure. But, really the process is easy. If you just take 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 4 is 8, and it works, you'll get it correct. And I'm not quite sure how it works. The students don't enjoy math. Come on, math is fun, Or they get to story problems and they really have no idea what to do because they can't make sense of this. How can we explain this? Maybe you're not sure yourself, and it's okay. I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. Students love visuals. Yes.
I've noticed that about 5 out of 2 students have had fractions.
Mm-hmm. And why? 5 out of 2. Yeah, you did catch me, all right. 5 out of 2.
One of my students
2.5 of them.
One of my students came home with that.
See?
It made me chuckle.
That's a good one. I'm going to pocket that one. I'm going to let my hippocampus go out for me.
But actually, whatever happened in school, they were kind of working on this. Is like why things work the way they do. And she's really picked up on that. So I'd be interested in hearing from our teachers here evidently are pressing into that point what you're teaching. I'd love to hear from the teachers. What is that?
What is what though?
What you're fixing, they're doing that in
Okay,
their school.
how are you teaching your students? Quickly. Bringing in candy bars, cutting things up. How are you showing them? How are you explaining this? Tell me.
Pizza parties.
You don't even need the hippocampus then, because that'll do it.
You bake pizzas and bring students to the kitchen, you cut them up and then.
That's wonderful. That is wonderful. Candy bars, drawings, pizza, whatever. 1/2 of 1/4. Are we starting with 1/2 or are we starting with 1/4? I'd start with 1/4, I think. Okay? We have 1/4. Now I only have half of the 1/4. Only 1/2 of it. So half of the 1/4. Here's my 1/4. I only have half of it. Half. How big is this half now? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the 1/2 of 1/4 of a candy bar is only 1/8 of a candy bar. You have 1/8 of the whole thing. They can see that. Chop up the candy bars, give it to them. They'll love it. They can see this. You can take, well, let's go to division. Division is hard, but it's it follows the rules. And here's what I'd like to encourage you to do. And I know, again, this takes time, and this, again, I go back to our review systems allow us, we must build in time to do this. The day we taught it, the next day, the review, however. So let's go to this. Isn't this really odd? 1/4 divided by, let's go the other way just for something more of this. Let's go by, let's go 1/4 divided by 1/2 equals what? Answer, reduced.
Half.
Half. Isn't that really odd? I don't know, students, but it's kind of neat, isn't it? Kind of cool, You ought to be infatuated with that. 1/4 divided by 1/2 is 1/2. It works. Follow the process. It works every time. Right? Invert, multiply. Okay, those who don't understand how to do that, don't feel frustrated, please. I'm just trying to make a point. So we would change this to multiplication. We would invert this. So now we've got 2 over 4, 1/2. How does that work? But then it really gets weird when you do it the other way. Let's go 1/2 divided by 1/4 equals
2.
Yeah, suddenly we have a whole number of 2. So 1/4 divided by 1/2 is 1/2. 1/2 divided by 1/4 is 2. Well, that really is weird. Funny numbers, but numbers are funny. And so we just invert and multiply, and you get the right answer every time you go on the test. Follow the process. Follow the skill. And then we wonder why students hate math. Because to them, it's just a bunch of processes. Doesn't connect it. It doesn't make sense. One way, and I'm convinced algebra, one of the keys to teaching algebra is to help them understand that numbers don't lie. And letters and subscripts and exponents, they all behave in the same way as numbers. X squared will act the same way as 2 squared or 4 squared. Obviously, depends what you plug in. But they follow the same processes. Use easy numbers to explain the hard. So, division. What does division mean? Again, this stuff takes time. Whether you do it the same day or later. 6 divided by 2 equals 3. What does this mean? What do we mean, 6 divided by 2? What would you tell your students?
Cutting something and making it smaller.
Okay, so the question is, how many times does 2 fit into 6? Right? We got 6, cut it up in groups of 2 and 3. They can see that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2 in each group, 2, 2, 2. We got 3 groups. So the division is how often one number fits into the other. Oh, this is true of fractions. How often does 1/2 fit into 1/4? Bring a bucket, bring containers. So we got a container. Here's a 1 container, it's 1/4. We got a mark. Here's another container. We got to mark it 1/2. We fill this one with water. How much of my 1/2 is going to be poured into my 1/4? 1/2 into 1/4. 2 into 6. 1/2 into 1/4. Same thing. All works the same way. How much of my 1/2 can I pour into my 1/4 bucket? Somebody?
Half of it.
Well, they can see that, right? You can do that for them. So you pour until the 1/4 mark is full. You put it back. Half of the 1/2 fit in. So how much of 1/2 fits into 1/4? Only half of it. Makes easy sense. Switch this. Go to this problem. You can see it again. So at this time, we have 1/2. So we mark off 1/2. Here we have 1/4. We're way down here. How much of 1/4 fits into 1/2? Well, you dump it in, and we're only here, aren't we? You dump it in again. 2. So how much of 1/4 fits into 1/2? Well, it's 2 of them. Well, why is my answer 2? It's no miracle. It's no, I have no idea. You just hurt and multiply, it just works. The answer key says that's right. No, why? When they get into real life, they're not going to have processes like this. They're not going to have story problems set up for them. It's going to be real life. How do numbers work? Again, review offers us the opportunity to just go back and work with that. Wow. One thing you must do is stop on time. Started a few minutes late, and I stretched it. Now it's time to close. Thank you for your, how many would say the word we don't want to choose? Truck was in the list. No? You're very good, hippocampus. You're excused.